In this segment of Time for Change Kitchen, we are going to make a creamy tomato sauce with Italian spices. It's a very easy sauce to make, and it's very versatile. I use it for my creamy penne pasta with broccoli. I use it for raviolis. You can use it over stuffed pasta shells. You can use it, of course, with just fettuccine or spaghetti. So this is a very useful sauce to learn, and we are going to make it right now, and it's very easy. I'm using 3 cups of chopped tomatoes, and these are actually tomatoes that I canned myself, but if you don't have access to freshly canned tomatoes, then this is fine. This is about 4 more ounces that I'm using, but that's okay. This is Muir Glen organic crushed tomatoes, and these happen to be fire roasted, and I've used these and they're very nice in this sauce. We're going to turn this up and allow it to start coming to a slow boil. And while we're doing that, we may as well add the spices. I'm using 2 tablespoons of basil. Now this is also basil that I have harvested from my garden and dried, and it's a little less concentrated than the basil you would buy in the grocery store, which is very finely chopped up. And so if you're using basil from the grocery store, you may want to start with a little bit less. But I know that 2 tablespoons of my garden harvested basil is perfect for this amount of sauce. I'm also using a teaspoon of oregano. Now this oregano is not from my garden, and as you can see, it's much more finely chopped. And oregano tends to be a little stronger than basil anyway, so you want to start with a smaller amount and adjust it as you taste it. So I'm using a teaspoon of oregano, and I'm also using a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We really are cooking for health, and so we want to reduce the salt as much as possible, and a 1/4 teaspoon is fine. I'm not going to add this just yet. It's better to add salt at the end of the cooking, but I just wanted to let you know that we were using that. So while this is heating up, I'm going to stir this in. Okay, I've covered this and I've brought it to a low boil, and now I'm going to turn it down and let it turn it down to a fast simmer, and I'm going to keep it covered and allow this to cook for a few more minutes. And while that is happening, it's already developed a wonderful aroma, and this may seem like a little bit too much basil to put in here, but it isn't, because we're going to add a cream sauce, which we're going to make right now. I'm going to turn this down and set this aside. Like I said, we're making a cream sauce, but of course we're not using dairy, so we're going to make a cream sauce out of cashews. And we are using 1/4 cup of cashews, and you do need a blender for this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a high-powered blender, but if you're using a regular blender, you should probably soak this for a couple of hours first. So we're adding it to our high-powered blender, and I'm going to start with 1/4 cup of water and see if that will do it. We'll get it blended, and if not, we'll add the rest. I have 1/2 cup of water measured out. Whenever we're using high-powered blenders in the kitchen, they make lots of noise, so we protect our ears with earplugs. And before I start this, I'm going to give my sauce another stir. Wonderful. And I've turned this practically off, and it's still boiling like crazy, but it's fine. Okay, so we're going to start this on low. So one way to check if this is done is to look and see if there are pieces of cashews sticking to your sides and to your little wand here, and there are. So I'm going to scrape those down. We want a very smooth, creamy sauce, because if you leave chunks in there, it's going to leave chunks in your sauce, and we don't want that. So we have a nice creamy sauce, and this has been simmering away for us, and it smells wonderful. And we are going to add the cashew cream. Now this is just like whipping cream in the sense that it thickens as it cooks, and so it will give us a nice rich creamy sauce. You have to be careful with cashew cream, however, because it likes to scorch. So you'll have to keep an eye on this and stir this occasionally. This is perfect. And it will continue to thicken. And I reserved this other quarter cup of water just for the purpose of cleaning out this carafe and using every bit of these wonderful cashews. Okay. So we'll add the rest of this in. Now this seems like a bit of a soupy sauce, and it should be. It's wonderful to use, like I said, with penne pasta, and it fills up all the tubes of the penne, and it's just a luscious, wonderful, rich sauce. I'm going to cover this, and at this point I'm going to add the salt. This is 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And we'll taste it, and if it feels like it needs a little more, we'll add a little more, but you don't want to overdo salt. We'll let this simmer for a few minutes, and remember to stir it frequently because cashews love to scorch. So we'll let this cook for a few minutes, and we'll be done. Okay, so this has been cooking for about 5 minutes. You can see that it's just a lovely, nice, rich, creamy sauce. And I want to taste it and make sure it has enough salt. By the way, this is a terrible habit, especially if you're using metal spoons, because it'll really ding up the edge of your cookware. As I have not been able to break myself of in 50 some odd years of cooking. And so this is really the better way to do it. It's just tap it against your hand. But I haven't been able to retrain myself, unfortunately. I've stirred this several times. It's been cooking for about 5 minutes and it's ready to eat. And it's perfect. It's got enough salt and it's got just the right flavor blend. One of the things I want to mention is that if you like a little bit of spice in it, you can add a pinch of cayenne to this too, right after you add the cream sauce or right before you add the cream sauce. When simmering this sauce, be sure to, like I said, be sure to stir it often. But another thing is you do not want to cook this on too high a temperature, because just like whipping cream, this will tend to separate and it will have a very unattractive appearance if you do that. It'll have a grainy sort of curdled milk sort of appearance. Even though it's not dairy, it will still do that. So that's something to keep in mind. And so now it's ready to use with penne pasta, with stuffed pasta shells, with ravioli, with anything you desire.